Next up, we have, I am really bad at names. I'm so sorry. She's joined the lobby. She is a product security governance leader for Dell Technologies, and she'll be sharing the slides with us and talking more about data privacy threats and vulnerabilities.
Hi, Joy. My name is Smitha. Hello, everyone.
Smitha. Sorry about that. Okay. Did you have slides to share with us today?
Yes. Joy, and we do have a poll coming in between. Will you be helping me with that?
Yep, I sure will.
Perfect. So for some reason, the background didn't come up in this one. So sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay, so let me know if you can see my screen.
We don't have sound. Did you mute you're not muted on our end.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yep, we sure can.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you are connected. I'm Smitha. I'm part of Dell Technologies. I'm the product security and governance leader in the security and resilience organization. I'm here to talk about data privacy and protection. Basically, how do we protect ourselves and our organizations from various data privacy threats and vulnerabilities that are around us? With that, let's take a look at the evolving threat landscape around us. So there are a lot of threats and vulnerabilities around us, and today's world is all digitized, it's evolving, it's transforming, everything is getting digitized. And also the data costs and the storage costs are drastically reducing. So these decreasing data storage costs are leading to storage of lot of data, lot of information. And this information can be customer information. It could be any other critical information. However, the storage of this critical information is increasing. What it means is with this storage of lot of information, there is also a risk of compromise of this data, which can lead to loss of reputation, loss of financial data, and so on. So these are some of the risks that come into play because of this. Apart from this, there is a lot of evolution going on. The Internet of Things. So we have a lot of evolution that has happened, where we have a lot of devices which use sensors. For example, it could be home automation, it could be industrial automation, automobile automation, which is using the Internet of Things and related technologies. What it means is these sensors are processing, using, and transmitting a lot of information. And this information can be a data belonging to individuals. So which is very important, and which is where today's topic is going to focus on how we can protect the data and the privacy, both things. The next point is devices that we use today. Almost all the devices, handhelds, for example, that we use are smartphones, smartwatches. All these things are always on. What it means is we are always transmitting data through the apps, through all the other applications on these always on devices. And that can include your own personal information and critical data. So these are some of the things. Another critical thing in this evolving threat landscape is cloud computing. So cloud computing is something where it is like a double-edged sword. If used correctly, it does provide a lot of value, but if we do not protect the data, it will lead to a lot of loss of information, which is critical to, it may be critical to our customers, or it could be very critical to our organization. Last but not the least, digitization of paper records. So this is something which is changing the landscape, which means all the critical information like our health records are getting digitized, and they are getting stored on cloud, or they may be getting stored in the servers in some data center, or could be any local place where it is managed. So what it means is our information is no longer on paper. It's in cloud somewhere. So it could be very, very critical to us, and it should be up to us how we want to disclose this information. With that, I do want to give an example where I personally saw this happening, and I did want to share this story with you. Back in June 2020, I mean, after the COVID lockdown and everything, during those difficult times, suddenly I noticed that my data from my smartwatch was not uploading to the app. So I thought I did something wrong, or, I misconfigured something, or maybe internet is down. I tried everything, debugged everything, and then almost for more than 24 hours, nothing was happening there. And later, we see the news that this specific smartphone provider, they went into a ransomware attack where a lot of data was compromised. And then they had to pay a huge ransom to get the data back, which means my data was with someone else under hostage, and then it got back. So what it means, all the critical information that belongs to me, my personal information, my weight, all the information about my routine, GPS location where I was running on those days, all this information about me was compromised. So this is something which we need to think very carefully about how our data is being used. With that, so there is data everywhere, and we do realize that in this evolving digital world. And where is privacy? So if my data is everywhere, every app is processing my data, every web application is reading my data, my analytics and whatnot, where is privacy for me as an individual? So this is something many times not everybody thinks through, because they may not be security professionals, or they may not be very, very conscious about data. So this is where we need to bring that hat in, and we need to wear that hat, and we also need to educate others to see through these lens, so that we know what is going on with our data. With that, I would like to quickly cover the fundamentals of data privacy. Knowing our data, knowing the data around us. So we have a lot of information around us. It's all digital data. It's everywhere. Think of it like a cloud where everything is floating around. In this pool of information, we do need to focus on the information that belongs to people. So if you kind of minimize that circle and focus on this information, which can be belonging to some people. In this pool of information, again, we need to narrow down to information that belongs to individuals. So what is that data that belongs to individuals? So that is the data which is critical, that needs to be protected, and that needs to be focused on. That is where we need to be careful about. Now, with that, I would like to introduce you to the definition of personally identifiable information. It's popularly known as PII. So this PII information is something, it's nothing but a data element which will lead to identification of an individual. So it could be one element, it could be a combination of few elements which can narrow down to information about a specific individual. So that is PII. Now, what are some of the common sources of PII? It is online information. Today, if you just go to any search engine and type my first name, last name, you will see a lot of information, which is online information about me. It could be my social networking related information. It could be any other information around there. Next one is contact information. It could be email address, or it could be my home address. So this is some examples of sources of PII, because we need to understand the sources before we go to the actual elements of data. And also some of the important pieces are government issued IDs in the respective countries, which will be very important piece of source of PII. Next one is geolocation of the data. So this is something very, very important and critical, and often we don't really pay attention to that. So if an app is asking you to share your location, sometimes the options in the app may not be very clear or specific, and our location may be tracked. So we need to be careful of that, and we need to be comfortable with that. And if not, we need to always disable that information if we don't want to share that information. The next one is the device address. So it could be my laptop IP address, or it could be the MAC address. So the device itself has a lot of data and lot of information that can lead to my identification as an individual. Last but not the least, the huge source of critical data is medical records. So the medical records belonging to a person, if it is leaked or if it is compromised, it can cause harm to that individual. So these are some of the sources of PII we need to pay attention when we are on a daily basis, when we are transacting with a lot of data around us. So I would like to give some examples of PII, like social security number, credit card number, driver's license, email address, bank account information, IP address, MAC address of any device that belongs to a specific individual. Now, apart from the regular PII, there are specific PII that is sensitive, that is labeled as sensitive PII, that is date of birth of an individual, place of birth, their mother's maiden name, biometric information, health records, genetic information, and financial information. So these pieces of information, or PII, is specifically categorized as sensitive PII. Now, I would like to pause here, and we could take a few questions, and then we will move on to the poll. Any questions at this point? Or we can go to the rapid fire round with polls.
Hit us with the fire, but we do have a poll answer.
Let's go for it, if everyone is okay.
Let's go for it. No questions in the lobby.
Awesome. Okay, so since I'm presenting, I may or may not see the poll. I may need your help,
That's
Joy, to
perfectly fine. I got you.
thank you.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joy.
So the question that was asked in the, do you have the poll questions on your slides?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Well, does it have the answer?
Yes, it does.
Oh, no, we can't do that. So let's see. Which of the following is personally identifiable information? Option A, smartphone devices. Option B, home address. Option C, my office address. Option D, IP address of an airport kiosk. And option E, the GPS location of a coffee shop or store. And so popular answer was home address. Uh-oh. Did we lose her? Smith.
Cool. So now these are the questions, and are you all ready to see the answers?
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Before we answer this question,
yes.
Is it just one answer to this question?
No, so for each of these options, you need to say yes if it is a PII, and no, you need to select no if it is not PII.
Oh, I get
we can just play it in the chat. I mean,
okay.
We can always play here in the chat box. Okay, first one is smartphone ID. If you think it is PII, type yes.
Popular answers. So we have the popular answer is all of the above. Yes, is PII.
Okay, interesting. Any other guesses? Anything else? Any other opinions?
Well, I feel like I think smartphone device is yes because of what you just said about your information being taken. Home address, yes. Don't want you to know where I stay at. Yeah. Office address, maybe if you had like a super secret place you worked at, but no. So I'm gonna just go with no. IP address of airport kiosk. Of the airport's kiosk, no, because it's the airport's kiosk. And then GPS location of coffee shop in the store, I'm gonna go with not the specific coffee shop or store, but maybe my device, which goes back to number one. So I'm gonna say no with that.
Perfect, Joy. You're my hero. You got everything correct.
It's hard work. It's hard work. It was teamwork.
Awesome. This is awesome. All right. With that, we move on to the next one. Now, this is the next section is about solving this and finding the mitigation options. So we know that threats are everywhere. We know that PII is important and it's critical for all of us. And how do we protect ourselves from these threats and vulnerabilities? So there are two perspectives. One is individually how we can protect ourselves, and the second section is about how do we protect our organization where we work as security professionals or researchers. How do we wear the privacy engineering hat as researchers or cybersecurity professionals? So these are the two perspectives. So the first perspective is how do we protect ourselves from these threats and vulnerabilities as individuals? So we are the data subjects of the internet, and that's a fact. So we are consumers and also we are the producers of tons and tons of digital data. So some of the things where we do not have control over, I think in those situations, the PII compromise is something beyond our control. But what is in our control and influence are the following. So most of us, including myself, we do not read through the privacy statements or the cookie consent of these web applications or tools, or it could be apps. We don't read through that. We just say okay and move on. So I think it is time in this digital era. It is important to read through that and see how my data is being used, or how is my data being sent to someone else. I think it is important question to ask ourselves and pay attention to that. Second one, we need to be asking ourselves, am I sharing any PII that I do not want to share? For example, if any app is processing my photographs, or if it is processing any of my analytics like GPS tracks, am I comfortable with that? Some people are comfortable with that, but I may not be comfortable with that. So it's very important for us as individuals to ask ourselves whether we are okay to share that information that this app is processing and storing or sharing. The last but not the least, we need to also think whether my data is being used fairly. Sometime back in last September, it so happened that I had a routine to travel to my in-laws over the weekend, and suddenly I get a pop-up alert from one of the applications saying, "Hey, get ready to go to Mysore." So this was a bit shocking to me, and I felt that my information is not being used fairly. So these are few examples, and it's important now than never to pay attention to what or the privacy statements, what is a cookie consent, and read through that as data subjects of the internet. Now, I move on to the next one, where how might we protect our organizations from these threats and vulnerabilities as cybersecurity professionals wearing data privacy hat. So there are a lot of times when people ask me, how do you distinguish clearly between security and privacy? What are the differences and what are the overlaps? So I do want to give my perspective on this. Security is a process, whereas privacy is a consequence. Security is an action that you take against something to protect or prevent, whereas privacy is a result of some consequence. It is a result of successful action as well. So it is actually an aftermath of something bad that has already happened, where we cannot think and look back. Security is very strategic. It's a strategy. You define things, you protect things, whereas privacy is an outcome. So it has always some action, some result, or an outcome associated with that. Security is a state of being free from danger. It's all about feeling safe, being safe, and protecting ourselves. Privacy is completely different. It's a state of being free from unsanctioned intrusion. It's all about privacy. It's all about what I want as an individual. Now, there are some overlaps of security concerns and privacy concerns. That is all about securing the PII. That is where both of these overlap. Now, privacy has specific actions or consequences that can lead to loss of trust, loss of self-determination. For example, if some of the critical information about myself is, compromised, it can lead to exclusion. It can lead to physical harm, and other things which are very difficult for me as an individual. There may not be money involved there. There may not be any other financial loss, but there can be a loss of autonomy, liberty as an individual. Next one is discrimination. So discrimination can lead to stigmatization or power imbalance. So this leak of information can lead to discrimination. Economic loss is something which we all know about, which is also important for the business. Economic loss is something we cannot take lightly about in an organization. Last but not the least is loss of trust. So in this situation, the data breach, leak of information, which is critical to maybe our customer information, will lead to loss of trust. So it will lead to a situation where our customers may not like us because we went through a data breach. So with that, I will move on to the principles of privacy. So no matter which framework we use, the principles of privacy are going to be the backbone of any program, anything that exists in today's world. So there are two major principles of privacy. First one is privacy by design, and the second one is privacy engineering. Now, when you look at this, privacy by design is popularly called as PBD. This is something proactive, whereas privacy engineering is reactive, which is focused more on implementing, developing privacy controls, whereas privacy by design is designing things when we build our products or creating privacy by design by default. That's the fundamental principle of privacy by design. Now, there are a few steps here in privacy by design. So first and the foremost is determining the requirements and developing policies around privacy, which is the first step. Next is to assess risks and then select appropriate privacy controls based on the privacy regulations, based on the data, based on the customer base we are supporting, based on the countries we are organized in. So a lot of factors come into picture, and based on all that, we need to accumulate all the data and come up with the privacy controls that are appropriate for our organization. The next one is to build an integration plan and develop a program to support this and make sure these controls are implemented. Then comes the engineering part of it, where we implement the controls, we perform integration, we test it out, evaluate, and train our professionals to be privacy aware. And then we go to a phase where we continuously monitor, audit, and look out for incidents and then fix those and make this like a cycle where we are continuously monitoring, continuously evolving our processes and design to support privacy by design and default. With that, I will quickly cover some of the aspects of these principles. But before we move on, I would like to see if there are any questions from the audience, and then we can move on to this section.
No questions in the lobby. And with 5 minutes left, we are super excited to see what else is left to discuss.
Perfect. So I would like to summarize some of the advantages of privacy by design. So privacy by design, as I mentioned earlier, is proactive approach where you are not bolting fixes. You're actually building in privacy, which means you are thinking through user shoes when you're building your products or services, and you're caring for your customers. And then most important thing is privacy embedded into the design. So we are thinking through privacy through the design, which will save a lot of cost uh, for the development, because you're thinking through privacy before you even write a single piece of code. The next, privacy by design provides end-to-end security lifecycle protection, which means we are embedding security, we are going hand in hand with security lifecycle, which means you're bulletproof. The next one is visibility and transparency, which is important, which is critical to get customer trust. Last but not the least, we are respecting our user privacy. So we are respecting our customer privacy by proactively thinking through privacy. So these are the advantages of privacy by design and privacy engineering. I'm going to quickly cover because we are almost on time. So it starts with nailing privacy requirements, then going through risk assessment and choosing the appropriate model to mitigate those risks, and then map the requirements to the assurance program that we have, and then build a risk management framework where we are selecting the appropriate controls and implementing those and evaluating those. And then the last critical important step is privacy impact assessment, where we are measuring, we are assessing the risks, and we are measuring the controls implemented, and we are validating how the systems meet the requirements that we define. So this is all about privacy engineering, and we move on to question and answer.
Any questions in the lobby? We have no questions in the lobby. No questions in the lobby.
Cool. Sounds good. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And there is a call to action for all of us before we wrap this up. I invite you to take this knowledge back to your teams, back to your homes, and create awareness among your community, among your organization members, and take an action within 2 to 3 weeks to build these things into your organization. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much thank you so much for joining us. We really do appreciate it. If we wanted to find out more information about PIR, how can we get in touch with you?
Yes, you can reach out to me on social media. I'm very active in LinkedIn. I will be happy to share any information that might help improve the awareness, and also any new technologies that you want to explore. I'll be happy to guide there with appropriate standards and controls and a lot of information.
Well, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Joy.